In 2020, Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming won the Republican primary there by almost 50 points. Then Donald Trump staged a coup. Cheney became one of his most vocal critics, and now she's trailing her election-denying opponent by double digits in this month's Republican primary in Wyoming. Unlike most of her Republican colleagues in the House, since January the 6th, 2021, Cheney has consistently spoken out against Trump as a unique threat to our democracy. And after she agreed to become the vice chair of the committee investigating January the 6th, she solidified her position as something of a Republican pariah. But it seems as though some of the party establishment may have changed their minds. Axios reporting that a handful of Republican operatives are quietly working to boost Cheney in her long-shot primary, signaling that there is in fact an appetite among a few old guard Republicans to try and move on from Donald Trump. But this is still an uphill battle for Cheney. So this week she brought out perhaps her most high-profile and loyal supporter to make the case in an ad.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election, and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it. Lynn and I are so proud of Liz for standing up for the truth, doing what's right, honoring her oath to the Constitution, when so many in our party are too scared to do so.
So, watching that, I'm reminded of that great headline from the satirical site Clickhole. Heartbreaking. The worst person you know just made a great point. And Dick Cheney is certainly in the running for the title of worst person in modern American politics. He is, directly or indirectly, responsible for some of the most cruel, shameful and lawless episodes in recent American history. And he's never been held to account for all the deaths and the bloodshed, for the Iraq War, for torture, for Guantanamo Bay, and countless other calamities. You could also argue that Cheney's catastrophic reign as possibly the most powerful and consequential vice president ever laid the groundwork for Trump's takeover of the Republican Party. And his expansive view of unchecked executive power made the office of the president that much more dangerous once Trump occupied it. Liz Cheney isn't much better either. She might be even more conservative than her father. She voted with Donald Trump 93% of the time. She continues to oppose, among other things, abortion rights, voting rights, and gun control. And neither Cheney, especially Dick, has offered any kind of real public apology for their past embrace of Donald Trump, both in 2016 and again in 2020. But here's the thing. Yes, the Cheneys have done considerable damage to America and American politics. And yes, the Cheneys are 100% right about the threat Trump currently poses to American democracy. You can hold both of those thoughts in your head at the same time, as I do. They're not mutually exclusive. And consider this. If the man who was once dubbed the Prince of Darkness and his right-wing daughter, if Dick and Liz say the Republican Party has gone off the rails, just think about how extreme that must make the GOP right now. Coming up, I'll ask a left-wing journalist and a former member of the Bush-Cheney re-election team what they think about Liz Cheney and reaching out across the political divide to stop Trump. Don't go away. Not that long ago, it would have been unthinkable to imagine someone on the left saying something, anything nice about Liz or Dick Cheney. I still refuse to say anything nice about Dick Cheney. But Donald Trump has forced some unusual political bedfellows, and a united front against the ex-president and his anti-democratic tendencies requires, at least in this one instance, partnering with people you might otherwise find completely noxious, when they, for once, are willing to stand up for what is right. Stuart Stevens is a senior advisor with the Lincoln Project, a former member of the Bush-Cheney presidential campaigns, and the author of It Was All a Lie, How the Republican Party Became Donald Trump. And John Nichols is a national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine, where he recently published a piece titled, Can Trump Oust Liz Cheney from Congress? Thank you both for joining me. John, let me start with you. It is understandably difficult for many on the left to give Dick Cheney, a man accused of war crimes, credit for anything. But as you tweeted, as someone who once thought Dick Cheney was the greatest threat, I have to agree with him on this one. You have been a pretty vocal critic of the Cheneys in the past. Explain why, in effect, you are on their side now.
Well, I choke on the notion of the phrase "on their side." What I will say is that I believe that Dick Cheney should have been impeached and removed from office. I think he was an incredibly dangerous figure who did tremendous damage to his country and to the world. By the same token, he's not in power right now. And his daughter, frankly, isn't in a lot of power. But Donald Trump is very much on the march. He is part of a U.S. and, in fact, global effort to move our politics toward an extreme nationalism that is incredibly dangerous, racist, and xenophobic. And so when he says that Donald Trump is the greatest threat to the United States at this point, in fact, I think in many ways to the world, I would have to agree with him, which is the first time I think I've ever said that.
I'm with you, John. I'm with you. Stuart, here's my issue with Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney. You are a never Trump Republican who wrote a very good book about how it was all a lie. You said you got it all wrong, and I appreciate that. The Cheneys, though, backed Trump both times round and have never really apologized for doing that. In fact, Liz Cheney still supports most of the hard-right GOP agenda, including opposing voting rights protection. So as much as I say they're right on this issue and Liz Cheney's doing a good job on the 1-6 committee, they still haven't done that.
Well, look, Liz Cheney has said voting for Donald Trump was a mistake. And the question I would ask is, why isn't the rest of the Republican Party doing what the Cheneys are doing? All it is they're just saying words. They're taking a position. They're not being asked to charge a machine gun nest or take a charge of beats the way others have who defended democracy. And look, I think the whole point of democracy is to have these serious disagreements about policy, about whether or not this person is a good president, a terrible president. But that's not where we are now. There really is an autocratic movement in America that is led by the Republican Party. And I think we have to agree that the Cheneys are showing decency and courage by calling it out.
Certainly Liz Cheney has shown political courage, there's no doubt about that. John, you also tweeted, quote, ironically, Cheney was such a disastrous vice president that Republicans recognized he could never be considered as a 2008 presidential prospect. Unfortunately, the party made no serious effort at course correction after the Bush-Cheney debacle, and that opened the way for Trump. I do think that's an element that gets under-discussed here. Bush and Cheney, as people like Barack Obama have argued as well, laid the groundwork for a Trump presidency. Trump bet big that going after Bush, going after Iraq would be a winning issue in 2016, and he was right.
That's right. And in fact, even Republicans came to hate Bush and Cheney. But the fact of the matter is that when Bush and Cheney were in office, they abused that office horribly. They used that office to do lawless and irresponsible things at home and abroad, and did tremendous damage to the country. They were not punished for that. They weren't held to account for that via impeachment or any sort of real action as regards Congress, nor were they held to account for that by the Republican Party. They were allowed, the Cheneys and the Bushes were allowed to become almost elder statesmen within the party. And then as time went on, as the party moved further and further to the right, even they got bit by it. But I think it's really important to understand that when Donald Trump was perhaps at his most dangerous, in 2016, at this point where he could have been stopped, right? Republicans like Dick and Liz Cheney did not try to stop him. Most Republicans got on board. And in fact, they were in the culture of the party as it now exists, which is it is more interested in winning office and holding power than it is in doing right by the country.
Stuart, what do you make of the fact that, per Axios reporting, some Republican operatives are apparently quietly backing Cheney in her primary? And can an ad from Dick Cheney change any Republican hearts and minds in this Wyoming primary?
Well, let's just pause for a second how extraordinary it is what we're talking about. We're saying that Republican operatives are supporting a Cheney who is a member of Congress trying to get her reelected in Wyoming. I mean, we've really reached a point where that's worthy of a story. I mean, that's extraordinary. I have no idea what's going to happen in this primary. I hope Liz wins. But I really don't think that she cares that much. I don't think that's what she's focused on. And, you know, when I got involved in politics, we used to say, if you only stand for re-election, you don't stand for anything. And I kind of thought we believed that. And I agree with everything John said about what the party should have done in 2016. They should have done it in December of 2015 when Donald Trump called for a Muslim ban. And I think the inability to imagine Donald Trump has always helped Donald Trump. Republicans, certainly, I was in that camp, couldn't imagine a guy who talked in public about having sex with his daughter getting nominated for the Republican nomination and didn't think that he could win the presidency. And I think we're in that same dangerous inability to imagine what will happen if Republicans are given a chance to do what they want to do to our democratic system.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the Islamophobia of Trump and the Muslim ban. Of course, this is my problem as a Muslim who has a bit of a memory. Liz Cheney pushed a lot of war on terror Islamophobic tropes in her time in office and didn't split with Trump after the Muslim ban stuff. She backed him for several more years and voted to re-elect him. But look, I'm glad she's speaking out now. I'm one of those people who says, I'm glad she's doing it. It may cost her job. John Nichols, moment of truth for you. You were living in Wyoming. You're a Democrat and you could vote in the primary. Would you vote for Liz Cheney to save her?
Really wrestled with this. I don't know that I would. I think that at the end of the day, voting for Cheney might be a step too far for me. But I don't live in Wyoming. And when I was there, I talked to a lot of sincere Democrats who will cross over and vote for Liz Cheney, someone who they never, ever thought they would vote for because they think it's that important.
Quick last question to you, Stuart. There's a lot of talk about Liz Cheney mounting a presidential bid, which I find a bit odd given she's struggling to save her seat in Congress. I mean, would she run as a third-party person? Wouldn't that just split the vote? I mean, what do you make of all the talk around Liz Cheney in 24?
I don't know what to make of it. And I think anybody who says that they know what would happen in a political science sense about it with an independent candidate coming from the conservative wing of the Republican Party is kidding themselves. I can argue this round or flat. I can argue that it would guarantee that either Donald Trump or whoever the Republican nominee is will not win, which I think is important. I can also argue that it will make it too easy for those Republicans who voted for Biden to have sort of an off-ramp. That they don't have to vote for the Democrat, that they can vote for this independent. And that would elect Donald Trump or a Republican.
Well, let's see if she even survives this congressional race. We're out of time. Stuart Stevens, John Nichols, thank you both for a fascinating and important discussion, I think. Thank you both.